We're gonna call the meeting to order at 5:30, and first up is the 2022-23 budget and proposed tax rate.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. So we'll get started. I know it's been a long journey. We've been working since February on this. Tonight I'm coming to the public to talk about 2022-23 budget and also the proposed tax rates for Southwest ISD. So the board knows the board's duty is to approve 3 budgets within the budgets of Southwest ISD. The top 3 are the only 3 is general fund, which is the majority of our budget, child nutrition, and debt service. We also approve 3 tax rates tonight and look at taxable values. Starting off with I'm going to jump right to the end in mind. This is kind of the final piece. You'll see the overall budget here later, but right now where we stand going into 22-23, total revenue projection is $141,535,677. Total expenditures, which includes the compensation plan, adding staff, we're in special ed, aquatic center, and then any rollovers that we had, I'll share with the board. A rollover is a budgeted item that happened in 2021 or 21-22, a project that's not finished that we need to finish in 22-23. We easily roll those over in the budget. So you can see, looking at this budget, the total difference between revenue and expenditures is about 7.7 million. Total actual deficit, when you take out the rollovers, is 5.3, and then total rollovers in 21-22 is 2.3. Here's a list of the rollovers, so you can kind of get an idea of what those items were. On Function 11, we had at the latest, we had to buy a bunch of dual credit books to start the school year. We couldn't wait until next year for the budget to open to do that, so we have a rollover there. We also wanted to buy some AEDs to put around central office area because we didn't have any. We had some extra funds. Those didn't come in time, so we couldn't close that out. Also, our extracurricular, we had our fine arts equipment that we still were purchasing from the 3-year plan, and also for Crewald that we didn't get those in time as well, and some aquatics equipment that like the weight room and stuff, which is still not there. So we're asking the board to approve that and put that back in the budget. We actually have a purchase order to get this updated. And we're waiting on the vendor to do it, so obviously it hasn't been done, so we were asking for that money back. And then in operations and maintenance, we have graphics that still need to be put up. We have a fire alarm that we're working on that's finalizing at Sun Valley. Some banners that we are purchasing and some equipment and parts at facilities and maintenance that hadn't came in time. And then under security services, function 52, surveillance equipment that we purchased that needs to be put up at the aquatic center. Some access control projects that we're doing across the district that haven't been finalized. And then the police department bought some equipment that didn't come in time, and so you can see the price there. And then lastly, probably the biggest part are our projects that we funded, the board approved to fund out of fund balance that haven't been finalized. Some of those were E-rate projects, the fencing project that's ongoing, and some other aquatics FF&E, which is equipment that's more for the facility. The Sun Valley project that was finished, but we haven't been billed for. And then moving the portables to Southwest Legacy, that's still ongoing. So those are your rollover lists to the general fund that was funded last year. And we're asking the board to approve those and move those funds back into the budget so that we can complete those. With that being said, I showed the deficit of about 5.3, and then you throw in the rollovers. The strategy we used I know throughout our planning periods and our budget workshops, we saw a big deficit, and then we were continue to watch that and see how we could strategize around that. We've been able to dwindle that down a little bit. The strategy has been using ESSER funds to keep us, from being too far in that deficit. So right now, the district has moved about 5.3 million salaries into ESSER 2. So tonight we'll do an ESSER 2 amendment to help fund that for next year, and that's pretty much any director, coordinator, assistant superintendent, executive director that's not funded from a special revenue fund is now being funded out of ESSER. This is something that we'll have to probably deal with in 2 years, and gradually bring all those people back into our general fund. The other is the ESSER 3 teachers that we're still funding. This was bigger. We cut some, and we'll continue to cut those down as we get into, as ESSER 3 ends in the next 2 years. So we have about 8.5 million worth of salaries in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, and we have 2 years of funds to get out of that, this predicament. And so we'll be continuing to work on that and see how we can use that. I will say this, we have about 6.5 million in vacancies. So that doesn't just necessarily teachers, but it's bus drivers, custodians, and not always do we fill all those jobs. So there is some wiggle room there on vacancies versus what is actually going to hit the budget. But we budgeted for them because we are still looking for those positions. Doesn't mean we're going to fill them. The last thing that I want to remind the board about, which is not accounted for because this will be an audit thing as we get to our audit, and the auditors come in, they'll help us classify this. We were overfunded by the state this past year, about 6.7 million based on our attendance in our ADA. And I've been sharing this slide because I'm working with the auditors and they'll give me a final as we get into September on which books this will hit, whether it'll hurt us next year or going to reflect back to 21-22. What I'm hearing, it'll impact 21-22. So our final, how I gave you in September, what our final fund balance, what we're putting in, this is probably where that's going to show up. So hopefully it won't hurt us for next year, but just realize the state has already paid us this money. So whether it hits fund balance and goes against our books for 21-22 or 22-23, we're still 6.7 million short somewhere. And so that'll be an adjustment you'll see later on, and that'll be towards when we do the fund balance items and we have the auditors come in and talk to us about that. A lot of districts do that. Usually it's in the positive for us. This is kind of our first year where it's been, and you can see the numbers there. So looking at the budget overall, remember the board, you're going to approve this by function. So when we do a board amendment every month, I bring the board amendment updates and I say, well, we're moving more money from function 11 to function 13. Well, the board has the authority, you approve that. In the district, we cannot move funds between functions without your approval. So you can see the majority of our budget is in function 11, which is instruction, 83 million of the budget. The next top is plant maintenance and operation. This is everything from facilities and maintenance budget to the staff that we have on campus as our custodians across the campus, and then it's about 5.4 million in utilities and another almost 1.8 million in insurance and property insurance. So that's a huge budget that's part of the pie. And then you have your campus administration, which we don't call them instruction, but they are your principals and your admin staff on campuses. That's at about 8.4. Then you have your extracurricular, which is about 6 million. That's all your athletics, your fine arts, any extracurricular activity that we have across the district. And then you have the next, probably biggest piece is your transportation department, which is about 5.3. And so you kind of see the breakdown. You're going to get to see a little bit later the actual numbers side by side, but that kind of gives you the idea where our funds are. Now, funds by object. Object is, we have basically 4 kind of object codes. 6100s are all your salaries, anywhere from substitutes, professional staff, your clerical staff, your auxiliary staff. And you can see out of the the 141 million, or 146, 118 of that is in salaries. So a big piece of that, about 80% of our budget is going towards some part of salaries. The other 12 million that's up there, the professional contracted services, that's like anything that we hire to contract out, like where it's maintenance, people coming in and fixing our stuff, or consultants that we hire. But the big piece of that 12 million is utilities, because the utilities come out of 6200s. And then you have 6300s, which is supplies. That's anything that we purchase for any campus, any athletics, any fine arts, in our offices. So that's your budget for 6300. Then you have 6400, which is kind of miscellaneous. That's all your travel. That's all your kind of like food and t-shirts that somebody may purchase. So that gives you an idea of where our money's spent. Now you look at it by campus, the idea is to try to make sure that we're balanced and we're equitable. And so this is the overall fund. When you take a campus and you put all their staff, and that's everybody from custodian to the principal to every teacher on each campus, and we use formulas to do this. We staff with formulas, we do budget by formulas, and it's all based on enrollment. And this is the idea where enrollment versus ADA, because remember we get paid off of ADA on these numbers. And so we're trying to balance that. One thing that you will see sometimes, we will have certain campuses will have more services than others, like at special ed, they may have a behavior unit that another campus might not have. So sometimes the numbers look inflated, where a campus, why does that campus have a little bit more money? And some of those special type scenarios happen. And then also sometimes you run into a campus that has seasoned teachers. So if you have a bunch of teachers that are 20 plus years, their salaries are going to be a lot higher than a campus that has brand new to 5-year teachers. And so we try to monitor that and look at it, and it's all kind of based, and I'll give you an idea. So sometimes when you see more students on a campus, you're gonna see that we're spending less on students because there's more and so you're trying to figure out a fine line there. So if you look at the high schools, it looks like Southwest High School gets more funds, but the amount of students that they're servicing, you can see that its cost per pupil is actually lower. So we're spending less per student there, 7,600 because they got 2,100 students versus Legacy was at 1,900 students. And so that's why we're monitoring those numbers and we look at those formulas and then we try to see, okay, does this campus need more staff? And that's when we come in with the formulas. So it gives you an idea, this sheet gives you an idea of what we're spending per campus. And we monitor this because we have to stay comparable when we get into our title funds to make sure that we're being equitable. Budget by program. These are our big allotments that we get from the state based on our special populations. We have our gifted and talented, our career and tech, special education, all our comp ed funds, which is our at-risk kids, and the funds that we get specifically for at-risk, bilingual, and then our early childhood and pre-K. The two major ones that have really grown exponentially is probably been our early childhood pre-K program because we're pre-K for all, and then our special ed education, which has really increased. And so this is funds that we are spending on these types of programs. Going to departments, I gave you this list so you can kind of see each department, kind of the business and the operational side. You can see the different departments and how they're funded. I'm not gonna go through all these because you can have them there in front of you, but our biggest probably on this list is technology in our PEAMS department and their staff and their budget. And then central office encumbers a lot of smaller departments like our communications department or community relations department. This is also the budget that we fund all of our events out of and our postage and all that. So that you can see that budget's a little bit bigger, but that budget has, like when we have Cowboy Breakfast, we have a budget set aside for central office for that, employee picnic, convocation, all the different things that the district does is funded in the central office budget. And then some of the bigger budgets across the district that are not campus-based is probably these, at least the first two, transportation and F&M. Those are big budgets with all the staff, and it's mostly made up of staff, and then you have your contracted services. We have our security budget, and then I put up there utilities. Our other governmental budget is anytime we have to send a kid off our premises to a facility, we have some fees that we have to pay, and so we budget for that. Then you have your superintendent C&I, the other divisional budgets. Those are listed for you so you can see what those budgets are. And really curriculum instruction is a little bit different animal. They have their own org, but they also have other allotments, like the bilingual department has an allotment they fund people out of. But this really captures mostly the professional staff and the leaders within the C&I budget. Any questions on the general fund budget? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So when you were talking about the per pupil cost at each campus,
Yes, ma'am.
and you said that you have to keep an eye on the equitability.
Yes.
So how are we gonna account for CAST-STEM being almost twice as much?
The difference between CAST-STEM, and this is a topic that we talked about, it's a topic we talked about, okay, we're in a financial crisis, how do we sustain this? Enrollment's gonna be key. But what, for us on the federal side, when we do our comparability report, we have to compare like campuses. So what that means is the two high schools are like campuses when you look at their models, and because of their size, that's what the feds will compare us on. They won't compare us, they won't let Cass be comparable to them because it would be like we would need another Cass high school somewhere else, and they would use those numbers in the model for that. So that's the only thing that we get away with Cass. And having these, because other districts do this too, they have smaller little high schools. It's really based on a like campus. I know Ms. Francis is here because she's really good at this part. But we won't get hit on comparability because of the kind of school cast is and the size of it.
Will they compare them to the other casts?
They would if we had our own. They don't compare them to outside. You're only comparing yourself and then making sure you're equitable. Now, that number could go down on cost per pupil if we had more students there. Right now, or the other way that we counter this is we look at the staff and say, well, now we only have 200 students there. Does this staff need to be there? So this number was a lot lower last year, but because of the size of the enrollment now, it's gone up. Because
so is it something that we're looking at? I mean, because that's pretty drastic difference as a community member looking at that.
Yes.
You're spending $7,600 for my child that goes to Southwest High School, and then $13,000 for 205 kids that go to CAST-STEM. So I'm just
No,
wondering how we
and
answer
it's-
that.
It's really a great observation, because that's the truth. And so, CASTM was the second CAS high school of the 6 or 7 that exist now in San Antonio. And when we started CASTM, we always started it with working towards the objective that once a fully fledged, especially high school, 9th through 12th grade, it will have at least over 600 students, and the goal was to get to 800 students to make it a little more cost neutral and put it in the ballgame. When the pandemic landed on top, that's when we saw a huge decrease in student mobility and moving. People were just staying put where they were. And so we went through that 2-3 years, still not out of the pandemic, but we were dealing with aspects of it. So the goal is, and we had this conversation, that we really need to look at student enrollment into that campus. And if we can't change that in 2 to 4 years, then we need to start making other decisions. Now, that campus would be a lot different if it were placed on the main artery as opposed to our old high school. We can't change that. But when kids get there, they have a really great school experience and everything works. It's supposed to act for all the districts that are doing it now as an incubator where we can experiment with different learning modules and methodologies, and then we take what we learn and we apply it everywhere. That's supposed to be the benefit and the return on investment for a campus like that. Because of when we opened it, when the pandemic hit, what we've experienced so far, we're not getting those return on investments yet. So we think it's worthy to keep going down that road to see if we can't change the enrollment numbers to, we've had this conversation in our senior staff regularly about how can we get higher numbers that cast in. But the short answer is yes, we have to monitor. If we cannot change that trajectory, we have to have a different conversation for the future. But I honestly think that we can, everything stays like it is, we can get those numbers back up to more cost neutral.
So are we gonna set, like, we're gonna visit it in 2 school years and see if it's getting better? I mean, we've had to have those conversations with, like, when we had the Edison project, we had all those parents that bought into sending their kids to Elm Creek at Crewald, and then we cut it because it was costing more per pupil than we were spending on the other elementary school. And then the enrichment center, and then the what were they calling, the academy?
Yep.
So I'd like to maybe discuss a time, like maybe in, like you said, 2 or 3 years to visit it and see if, how many kids can go there?
We can get up to 1,200.
Yeah, well, because when we had the freshman class there at that campus, we'd have to move Santa and I out of there, but I mean, we've had over 1,200 kids at that campus. So I mean, there's some different formulas and different strategies. We kind of opened it and wanted the kids to come first, and so there's staff models that we can look at. I know that, because at this campus we have, we have to get core teachers, and so
Right.
that was a big, like 16 of the teachers are core teachers, and
Yeah.
so. How do we share staff amongst the other campuses to do that instead of having, specifically CAS have? So there's a lot of things that we can do to like mitigate that, and we'll have to look at it. But right now, yes, 205, I mean, it's,
Yeah, I just want to have an answer when
Okay.
if somebody happens to look at that and we approve that budget, and then there, well, why are you approving that? And so we have an answer that we're
Well,
gonna
the one
visit
thing
it
that we-
again in a couple of years.
The one thing that we did do in going forward to, before this, project, was to opt out of Senate Bill 20, was it Senate Bill 21?
18.
Senate Bill 18, where we would get extra funds if we were to allot, one of us to serve on a committee or something to the effect where the board, or, we would have to relinquish some of our
correct.
entitlements as being board members, and we would have gotten extra funds to fund something like this capacity with this month. Now, I know we're the only CASTM school that has not done that.
Correct.
And so that is something that we may need to start considering in going forward in the next 2 or 3 years.
There are
to keep-
actually 2 of us. East Central just did it. So they're actually going down that road. We looked at the numbers, it wouldn't make a huge difference right now with the sheer smallness of the school, but for the future, this board may want to consider, basically you're in a contract with another entity to provide the leadership over that. We've always been from the premise that we can do this ourselves, we can do it really well. We do appreciate the additional funds, but it's not about funds. It's about making sure that we're addressing the needs of our students, our communities, and providing them a different experience. And I can tell you, just seeing the outcomes from last year's graduating class means it can't work.
Yeah,
We
I
can't-
know it can work, it's very
Yeah,
successful.
exactly.
I just wanna have an answer when people ask that
Well,
question.
I think the answer is, we talk about it weekly with our senior
Yeah.
staff, and we're looking at it weekly. Now, we can definitely wrap that to a brown bag and kind of break it all down, and really get into the information, and fly it to you guys, get some direction. We're actually, and I don't know where we are, but I can't really say, but we've actually even talked about continuing our enrollment campaign the first 3 weeks of this school year, because there's some students who may not feel good where they are, and they want a smaller high school. So we're still even trying to increase enrollment now. The freshman class this year is at 80, and we're trying to get that into the 3 digits.
Yeah.
Well, I
That
say
was
it's
my
80. that's a
question,
lot.
I was wondering if they were still accepting students throughout a certain time
Yes.
period.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, Brandon.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about the 6.7 million that, the state overpaid us,
Correct.
and you said that it's never happened to us, but of course, some of this has to do with attendance enrollment during COVID.
This,
So is there a lot of districts that are also in the red? due to that?
there is. And so this is a widespread thing, and so what they did is they came out and said they were gonna give us relief the first 6 weeks of the school year, and then they extended that for the next 4. And so they actually helped us with because this would have been a lot bigger number.
Okay.
So they adjusted our ADA back to 18-19 for the first 4-6 weeks.
Yeah.
But remember, we still had a lot of kids out on the virtual, and then even in the 5th and 6th weeks, our numbers really attendance-wise didn't get better, so we're really working on a plan we need to get back to like a 94%. So right now, the state's going to realize, hey, your attendance and your numbers didn't make, and this is how much,
Everybody.
yeah. And so there's a lot of districts that had faced this, and there's some that didn't.
So do you
Yeah.
think that there might be a continued, solution coming from the state, or is the state said,
The
that's
state,
it,
the
we're
state
gonna-"
right now is probably gonna say, this is a 1-year deal, hopefully it doesn't happen to you anymore, and you have ESSER funds to mitigate this. And
So they're not
that's,
gonna.
I haven't heard anything where they're gonna jump, because right now we have ESSER funds, so that's why you saw what I have in the budget in ESSER to help deal with, so we don't have this. Going into next year, unless we have an outbreak and COVID breaks out again, we need to have good attendance, and we gotta get better at it, because that's how they pay us. And there's not gonna be a relief on that until legislative session comes in and says, we're not gonna pay you that rate.
That's what I was.
And in all honesty, the state could have done full harmless for the whole year.
Because
Yes.
they could.
They
I know
chose
that.
not to because they want the local ISDs to fund this. And they could have done a lot better than just.
Well, because they
doing
want us to
full
use
force.
federal funds for this.
Correct.
Basically.
So moving on to, because I got a couple other budgets going to go through, and these are pretty quick. So we have the child nutrition budget, our Winston's here. And so fortunately for child nutrition, we served a lot of kids this year. We had a really great budget. And so his budget is balanced. There's a couple items in there. So his federal revenue that we're expecting next year will be about 13.1. And on paper, we're balanced, but we want to do some things because he's going to have some extra fund balance that he needs to spend because unfortunately for him, he can't just hold on to fund balance because it's federal funds.
Right.
So at Sun Valley, a new serving counter we're going to purchase next year. And then at Southwest High School on the older side of the building, we need to replace that freezer cooler. It's been there and it just needs to be replaced. So we're asking the board to approve that fund balance item. And then he had some rollover items at Greenwald. We're doing our School of the Arts, so we wanted to create get some better furniture in the cafeteria. So I know Winston's had purchased some tables, they just hadn't came in yet. Same thing at Southwest Legacy, and then there was a small purchase for some software that happened at the end that we didn't get paid out. So those are some rollover items. So he has a balanced budget, but he's asking the board to approve those fund balance items as an additional $590 to his budget. And what might come back a little later with some others, just depends on where we are on fund balance, because he has to be within, unfortunately, we need to have 3 months, he needs to not make sure he has too much. His is different.
Right.
Our debt service, the board approved a defeasance, and so based on the tax rate we're gonna adopt today, our total revenue will be about 24 million, and we'll pay out 24 million. Our actual debt payment right now is 19 million, so we'll get to pay an additional 5 million off, which paying off debt doesn't hurt. And so that will be it's a balanced budget. Now it'll be the proposed debt service budget. So this is the document, and this is the document you will see every month that has the budget amendment in it. So any changes that we do this document, we come to the board for it. So this is the document you will approve tonight when we adopt the budget. This gives you the general fund, everything I talked about, the general fund budget, broken down by the functions. Here's our revenue, here's all the different functions. And then you have the food service budget that I'm asking the board, today I'm recommending the board to approve. And then our debt service budget, and it gives you the totals and then what the cost per pupil. But this will be the actual document that we will submit. It goes to the state, it's part of our audit. It's also what needs to match our system. And then every month we make any changes. We want a fund balance item, or we move $1 from this function to this function, we come to you for approval. The proposed tax rates. Our proposed tax rate tonight will be $1.337500. I did share that based on our market values, but with the homestead in place, instead of $25,000, it's $40,000. The average homeowner who has a house, residence, that their value did go up, but they'll actually pay less taxes based on the homestead exemption and lowering those pennies. The language is not going to state that. The language will actually, the motion will be today to increase taxes by 18%, and I'm going to get into why, and it's really because the no new revenue rate. This rate right here is what they use. This is the rate that we had last year compared to this year, based on the values. And if we use this year's rate based on our values from last year, it shows that we're raising more taxes, because obviously we're going to collect more taxes because our property values increase. And so that's why it's an increase, and that's why we have to say it's an increase, even though everybody in here knows our tax rate went down. And so tonight we'll have the board approve the no new revenue tax rate, the voter approval tax rate. The voter approval tax rate is if the board decides to approve a tax rate higher than the voter approval tax rate, we have to go out for a TRE. We're not allowed to do that without voter approval, and so this year's tax rate, voter approval tax rate, is actually $1.3375, which we're right on it, and so we don't have to go out for a TRE. That's great news. So total revenue from tax rate. So on our M&O side, we're going to raise about $50 million, which last year was about 43. So based on our values, we're going to gain an extra $7 million, which the state will offset. On the INS side, it's about 23.94. And then I know it's 24 overall because we still collect some penalty and interest and some delinquent taxes. So total collections from this tax rate will be about $74 million for the district. I'll put up here a sheet for fund balance just for your, this is kind of where we are now. This is, if everything happened and we spent all this money and everything came to fruition and we spent all the budget this last year, we would be at 61 million left in fund balance, down from 73. I don't foresee that because we've moved a lot of funds out of the general fund into ESSER. So the idea is that we're putting money into fund balance at the end, but we also have that 6.7 hanging over our head, and so we'll get to that point probably in September and October when we get our auditors here. Comments or questions on the budget?
No. Okay,
Good job, Randy.
Thank you, sir.
thank you, Brandon.
This one's the same form, right? It's in
That's the budget, man. No, that's something different.
here. Oh, okay.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on the report? No? Okay, so we're gonna adjourn this meeting at 6 o'clock, and we will open the new one that was supposed to start at 5:45. We'll open it at 6 o'clock, and we will hear about the Southwest ISD ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 grant plans.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna bring up Loretta, but as Loretta's coming up, as we created the plan, we've gone through this plan, I looked at this plan over and over, and really there's some small changes, and it's really gonna be ESSER 2, trying to move funds that we had set aside in ESSER 2 to cover the salaries that you saw tonight, and then moving some things in ESSER 2 that we were gonna fund, that we're not going to fund ESSER 2 to ESSER 3. So we're just moving monies around to make sure that we could cover our deficits, at the same time still do the things that we want to do, that we have out there, like furniture and buying, making sure we do our playgrounds, and the things that we had in our plan. So she's just going to cover the kind of the highlights of the changes and for the board and the public.
Thank you, Brandon.
Here, this one. Sorry, this one. Sorry.
So just a quick reminder, the amounts we were allocated for ESSER 2 was $14,664,502, and for ESSER 3, it was combined 46. This is a different one, but it was combined 46. So I just want to, as Brandon mentioned, I want to share with you the areas where we are moving money, and all of the money that we are taking, we are moving it into the operation and continuity section, which is where we pay our payroll out of. And as he mentioned, we're doing this because we want to help the general local budget, but as well, you need to remember that the ESSER II grant is coming to an end in less than a year. So if we don't spend that money, we lose the money. Here, the first thing you're going to see is the impact on high impact tutoring. We'll have $1,825,000 taken out of it and moved into the other account. And again, remember that there are 2 other buckets of money that will also fund tutoring apart from ESSER. That is not local funds, they are federal funds or state funds. We are also moving money from the virtual learning. We finished with virtual learning, so we're going to move the remaining $2,600,000 out of there. Instructional materials and IMA, we've used some of the money. The plan is to move this money out, what's remaining, into the payroll account, but we're going to open up that account in ESSER III because there are still things that need to be purchased. We just can't get them purchased and sent in and paid for before the end of this year.
On that one, real quick, we're waiting for next year's spring adoption. I know Dalila and her group. And so next year's spring adoption,
This is a different one. This is not the same PowerPoint because summer
Yes.
school.
It's always look as my numbers.
Yeah, I saw you flipping, I was like, wait a minute, these numbers are not.
Stop share.
I was trying to find it.
Yes. Yeah, it's wrong. Oh, is it the second, which part?
The PowerPoint is
Because summer
different.
school would have lost. some
That
of
was
their
wrong.
funds.
Yeah, that's wrong. But there's a second one. Yes, we're not-
Well, you got that? Well, then use your sheet then. Here, use this. That would be my fault because I downloaded this for her.
Oh. Oops.
Was it there?
It's okay, Brandon.
Okay, so, my apologies, just going back, starting with high impact tutoring. So we're moving $108,927 out of the tutoring, out of the virtual learning, which is, as I mentioned, already stopped. We're not doing virtual learning anymore. There was $105,926 that we're looking to move. Instructional materials, which is the IMA, the textbooks, things of that nature. We had already moved some of that money out. There was a remaining $59,000 left in that account that we are going to move into the payroll account, but they will have a new account in ESSER III. So those funds that they did not spend will move over to the other account. Summer programs, which is summer school, we spent probably 75% of it, but there was a little amount left, and that was about $227,000 that we're looking to move. Follows after that is the operations and continuity. You'll see the addition there. That's the total of all the funds that we are looking to move that will be added to there. And that's where Brandon mentioned we're taking salaries, possibly incentive monies come from there as well. On CDC mitigations, there's a $3,750 decrease. And again, as a reminder, it's not that we don't want to have money for PPE, but we also have a totally separate grant that we still use and has quite a good, healthy fund in there to pay for any sort of PPE or sanitation supplies we may be in need of. And then on the bottom of the targeted interventions, there is $490,699 that we are looking to move. And this was for extended learning opportunities, primarily transportation, feeding kids in the after-school extended day programs. And then under well-rounded, we spent a good chunk of money there as well, but we did have $15,000 left there, so that will also be moved into the operational continuity. In the ESSER III plan, there weren't as many changes there, so if you will flip all the way to learning loss district-wide, this is our first change. We actually added this section so that we could provide the strategy for the instructional materials, the textbooks that was in ESSER II that we are now going to fund out of ESSER III. And we also added a section for summer school, summer programs, so that we can have money to utilize for our summer school next year as well. If you flip the page again, you see the operations and continuity. You will see a decrease of 2.3 million. That's because we're going to have to take our funds for the things that we're adding out of that operational cost section so that we can fund those. If you flip the page again, CDC mitigations, again, we are moving about $400,000 out of that program just because we do have that extra grant that will cover a majority of the items that we are needing for PPE and cleaning supplies. Social emotional supports. We have tranquility areas or classrooms areas in each campus, but the campuses have asked for additional funds because they want to add on a little more because they're using either two separate areas, one for students, one for teachers, or one larger combined area. So they needed some more funds to kind of round that out. We're providing them that there. And then if you skip down to the partnering with internal and external mental wellness, they also needed additional funds to make sure that we are able to provide services to our students and staff within the district. And then finally, on the last page of ESSER 3, where it says leadership, we added that section. We want to make sure that there are funds to provide professional development to our leaders within the district. And so we've added 200,000, or asked to add 200,000 there. Any questions?
What is the, let me see how this, what is the amount that we're gonna probably end up with after we spend, like, are we gonna be able to spend all this before the first one is due? You
The
said
first one,
Yes.
so after we move the salaries in, ESER 2 will be spent. Because we have about 6 million left right now, and we'll spend that just because the salaries are gonna cover that with whatever we have left. ESER 3, we remember the board approved some retention incentives. I mean, that's gonna probably, that'll probably be 5 million when we do those out of. So I think ESER 3, we got 2 years on ESER 3, and if we have to pick up the salaries next year that we're funding at ESER 2, we'll have it spent. We may not even have enough to get through the next 2 years with the funds that we have right now, with even doing all the things that we wanna do. And so we're gonna spend it. We don't want to ever see no money back.
Okay.
We need it and we're gonna take it.
And then there's a caveat, T8 put in there, that before it expires, you can move it all to fund balance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then part of the strategy to move to fund balance is you take and put you pay for something else that you would pay normally out of general fund, like our salaries. And so like all the salaries that we're covering, hopefully that money we get to put into fund balance. That's the strategy behind that. And I want to apologize, lesson learned, don't let me load somebody else's presentation, so sorry, Loretta.
It's
She
okay.
did a great job, she prepared for it, and I wanted to give her some
The numbers
adversity.
didn't look right, but that's okay.
So I do apologize to everybody, especially Loretta.
Any other questions?
She entrusted me to.
She's quick on her feet, man.
Yeah. So questions for us on the ESER 2-3 amendment?
I don't have. Do we have any public comments on the report? Nope. Okay, we will adjourn the meeting at 6:08. And we will start the special meeting at 6 o'clock. Lloyd.
Yes, good evening, board members and staff, guests. Welcome to the special call board meeting. We have some really quick agenda items to go through before we get there. And we do have a recognition. I believe we're running late.
Okay.
And if they happen to come in, we'll definitely stop and take care of them. But Mr. Campos is going to open us up with the invitation, followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Thank you. Lord, as we begin our meeting, we declare that your purposes will prevail. We ask that you give us wisdom, patience, and guidance as we plan for the future. Help us to respect one another and work together. We give you the glory for everything that is accomplished. Bless all our endeavors, especially today's meeting. Guide us in our discussions and lighten our minds in every decision that we make. Give us your grace that we may effectively do our parts as public servants. Bless our plans, programs, and projects so that we may achieve our objectives for your greater glory. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Capo, please.
Okay, we're gonna hold off on the recognition. Okay, do we have anyone signed up to speak, Mr. Rodriguez? No, okay. So we'll move on to item 5, consider approval of the 2021-2022 final budget amendment.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So the final budget amendment is the last one of the year where we have to balance out our functions. So part of the accountability for finances is that we don't have a function that goes into deficit. So the final budget amendment is really moving monies around within functions to make sure that every function's covered and that we don't have any deficits. And then on the budget amendment, I will say, I won't go through all of them, but some of the bigger ones is like function 11, we decreased it by $125,000 because we moved money into function 12 to cover the $204,000 deficit. So we had to add money. So that's an example. The other piece is in function 71. Function 71 is a part of a lease program that we have to start putting and coding any of our leases to function 71. This is a new GASB rule, it's an accounting rule. And so we have moved monies because we do have a copier lease that we do every year. So we have to put the principal and interest. And so if you go to print shop, we have all these printers there and big machines that we lease. So we have to code it to 71. It's kind of a new development. And so that's why we had to move money to 71. We normally don't have any money in 71 because we use that for debt service. But now we're having to move money there. So there's not a lot of big increases. We did have to increase the revenue and the expenditure side of our debt service, like $700,000, because we received a lot more funds this year in our INS for our debt payments. So that's the final budget amendment for 21-22. And so I'm recommending the board to approve the final budget amendment.
I move.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second, or do we have any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, passes. Consider approval of the 2021-2022 Fund 184 final budget amendment.
Bear with me on this one. So part of the last budget amendment you approved has this in there, but talking to our auditors, we had to be transparent. So our Fund 184 is a fundraising account that campuses have been using for years to put money in when they fundraise, not the clubs, not students, but like a campus does a t-shirt sale and they take their funds and they would put it in their 184. And it's been a messy process. It's a very difficult accounting system, and we've kind of looked around other districts and what they do. We also have Fund 461, which is called the activity account, which campuses use. So they have two fundraising accounts that they use. Campuses prefer using the 461 because it's very simple accounting rules, and it's just not as easy to use, or it's easier to use than the 184. The reason why I have to get this approved by y'all because 184 is actually part of the general fund. Even though the campus has raised it, we've been putting the money in the general fund as a revenue. And we want to close this and you only use 461, so I asked the board to approve moving the 184 funds, which is like $130,000 that they have raised, and it's all the campuses, and putting it in their 461 so they can use it as they please. And so from moving forward, we are no longer going to use 184 as a fundraising because we don't want to commingle general fund with fundraising funds. And it's just been a process, and I hate to say it, it's just what we always used to do, and like, we just think it's not a good process anymore, and it's better for our campuses to use 461 instead of 184. But we also want them to have their money, because I don't want it to go in the fund balance because we actually didn't raise it, they did it on the campuses. So that's, our recommendation is to approve to really eliminate 184 and let the campuses use 461.
And are you gonna be very clear about are you gonna be very clear about who's putting money in this account so that you can disperse it?
So we're planning on meeting with every bookkeeper, secretary, and principal. And most of these funds were a campus big fundraiser that was their funds, not a club, not students.
Yeah.
So we will meet with and some of these are rollovers for years at some other principal and other, so it's really a campus fund that we're gonna allow them, I would like for them to spend it and start over. So we're gonna give them their allotments on what each campus has.
Yeah.
We have it written down, we know exactly accounting wise, and we will meet with them and share, here's what you have, here's available for you to spend. It's actually available for spend now, they don't spend it because it's just it's a hard process on the 184 side.
And the student activity funds is gonna be the same one still?
The student activity is not being touched. We're saying.
That's separate.
That's club, has to be
Okay.
ran by students. They have a sponsor, but the students make all the decisions and they have to have leadership and they make decisions for them. These are basically a sunshine account for the campuses.
Okay.
So like if they want to do something on their campus, they can do that.
Sure.
And it's run by adults, not by the students.
Okay.
So is there any difference for the 461 and this
184 and 461.
181 and 461. Are there different laws to aspects for?
We actually have, in our county manual, they can basically use them for the same items. The biggest part of the reason why 184 is difficult, it's a flow in, flow out, you have to have it in the right code. With using 461, they get a $63.99 a supply account, and then they get a miscellaneous account, and they know exactly what money they have in there, and they get to spend it, and it's easier for our purchasing. Purchasing here, it's just a mess with 184. And explaining it to them and letting them know how much they actually have, because the accounting principles are different.
I move.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other questions? No? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you, that passes. Consider approval of the 2022-2023 district budget.
Recommended to the board to approve the 22-23 district budget as presented tonight.
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the budget? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. Consider approval of a no new revenue tax rate and voter approved tax rate.
Recommended to the board to approve and accept the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval tax rate for tax year 22-23 for Southwest ISD.
I move.
Second.
When is this resolution?
That's right now.
Somebody has to read this?
No, there's a motion and Daniel has the motion. He's gonna read
Oh, okay.
on that
Which,
next, on the
on
next
the one
item.
that they just first?
No, not that one. That one's just, the next one is the actual tax rate.
Okay, so the one I just read about the voter approved tax rate, is that the one that he's gonna read, or did somebody first and second that?
We first and second.
Okay,
You're making a motion on what you just had.
we're on 8. And we don't read that thing till 9?
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Consider approval of a resolution setting the tax rate for the 2022-2023 tax year.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $1.337500, which is effectively a 18.03% increase in the tax rate.
I second.
Well, this thing is not the same.
It's the same, but what he has is a different motion because he's doing the no new revenue rate
Okay.
versus the tax rate, and that one's gonna be like 17, because the language is different, but that resolution's right.
Okay.
It has to be a different motion because the motion is the no new revenue versus the new tax rate. That one's comparing the tax rate to the property values. But
Okay, I really don't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
So, the number 9 is the motion that he
Correct.
read. Okay.
Approve the resolution, and in the resolution you're gonna sign, the language is a little different, the percentage is off, but that's what I was sent by the lawyers.
This.
Yes,
Okay. All right, and it can be different than what he just
Correct.
said in public.
yes.
Okay. All right, any questions on that?
I have a question. So the motion says what the paper says, just in a different language?
No,
It's the same thing?
the motion that he's stating is if we go back to the no new revenue tax rate, which we just adopted,
Mhm.
so we have to compare the no new revenue tax rate to the new tax rate,
Mhm.
which is a 18% increase compared to the no new revenue rate. The resolution's comparing our tax rate to basically what our values are compared with the new values and what the tax rate's gonna, and basically it's a negative $26 increase,
Yes.
but it's like a 17% increase.
But we have to say that it's an increase.
We have to say an increase, you have to say an increase in the public setting, it
Yes.
has to be on a resolution, and I'm gonna have to post it on the front page of our website.
Yes. You
The-
explained that last time, right?
Yeah, that language, and I got it all written.
And so when you post it, you're gonna put in bold that it's negative.
Correct, I'm gonna
increase.
put this resolution, I'm gonna put this language on the website.
And you're gonna make this really big,
Correct.
because we're
I
not,
gotta do it all the same font.
okay, but we're
Yeah.
not raising, at the bottom line, people,
Our tax rate's lower,
Lower.
but the length, like,
which
Yeah.
really makes no sense.
It's a
Right. But the
negative of
value-
an increase.
I'll do it, but it don't make any sense.
I
Okay.
told you it was gonna be,
I get it.
Yeah,
I
we get it,
understand.
I mean,
It's because of growth,
yes.
growth in our district.
At the end of the day, nobody's values are, their
Right.
tax rate's gonna go up, or their taxes are gonna go up because of
The
value.
verbiage is
Because
just
of that.
very misleading.
correct.
It's
And yet-
probably on purpose.
Yes.
I think it's important to
Yeah.
also acknowledge tax
I think
rate.
it's collective.
Correct, our
Yes.
tax rate's
Tax rate has
down
dropped.
3 pennies.
Right.
Uh,
So we need the public to know that our tax rate is really dropping.
we're dropping it 3
We're
pennies
dropping
compared
our
to last year's tax rate.
Yes,
And it's
okay,
a negative.
We have no
growth.
control over the valuation that's going on.
right,
Correct,
okay.
absolutely.
All right, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.
So
Yes,
I think our recognition person.
Okay.
just gave-
all right. We're gonna stop?
You can do whatever, yeah. I got
Finish?
I
Okay,
got
we'll
two, and
finish
they'll-
and
they'll be
then
really
we'll do
quick.
our
Okay.
recognition. Okay. Consider approval of ESER 2 and ESER 3 federal grant amendment.
We're asking the board to approve the recommendation that is presented tonight on ESER 2 and ESER 3.
I move.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? No?
Nothing to
Oh, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Consider approval of school furniture for Crewell Road School of the Arts.
Yes, the district is using ESER 3 to purchase some kind of flexible seating to help with the Fine Arts Academy, to help them get started, kind of what we did at Hidden Cove. And so we're asking the board to approve about $150,000. It's like $149, but just in case there's some things that are missing, we're asking not to exceed $150,000 for GRE and a purchase of furniture for Crewell Road.
That's in addition to the tables that were on the other.
Yes, that was for the cafeteria. This is actually going to be classroom type seating.
I move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Consider approval of district-wide copier fleet lease extension.
Yes, so last year was the end of our contract for our copier fleet, and so we were gonna do an RFP and release it to the public, and that's normally our normal practice. So we started reaching out to firms to let them know we're gonna do this, and they basically told us, if you put one out, you're not gonna receive copiers for like a year. So we scrambled, and Canon was our vendor that we have our copier lease with, so we were able to use the DRR contract to extend it for another year. We plan on releasing the RFP for October, so that we have plenty of time to get the copiers, and hopefully the chain disruption is gone by next year. But we're to the end of the current contract, and we want to extend it for another year using the DIR contract, so that we have copiers, and so that then we can release our own RFP. Because normally we would release an RFP like early spring, and so that's what was our plan last year. And when we started to get ready to do it, all the companies said, we won't be able to accommodate you by August. It probably won't even be till next August. So we're asking the board to approve the extension of our copier fleet, but also understand that we are planning on releasing in October an RFP so that we can be ready for next year, because we want to start a new lease.
Okay.
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Consider approval of an amendment to the Southwest ISD 22-23 school calendar.
Due to the election, I think, and the size of the election, we have multiple sites that are going to be election sites on November 8th. There's other school districts that have already moved. So we're asking the board if they would recommend to the board to make an amendment to our calendar and make November 8th a student holiday, but a staff work day, so that we don't have to worry about our campuses having all these people coming to the polls. And so that is a recommendation from the district to the school.
I move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions? Can we start, are we gonna start notifying parents like
Soon
ASAP?
as we get this approved, we'll get a new calendar, we'll start sending out, and we'll put it out there that we're gonna be out.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. You want, let's do the recognition?
Yeah, so I think we have Southwest High School administration here, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We're bringing in our principal, Amanda Wagner, in.
So I don't want to steal Ms. Wagner's thunder, but I will kind of preface what we're going to recognize is today a young man who really demonstrates perseverance, determination, making decisions and making things happen. And so we'll get to the story, but today we're going to do a little impromptu commencement with our trustees here and with a young man who life happened in 2008. Did not allow him to cross the stage then, but who kept with it and kept at it and advocated for himself, reached out on social media and connected with a friend of all of ours and Dr. Fay and said, hey, you were my principal back in 2008. Life happened. I didn't get to graduate, my friends. I'm looking for a pathway forward. We pulled this young man, Jeremiah's transcripts, looked at him. He was so close to getting himself there. We contacted Ms. Wagner and her and Joanne Gonzalez, the academic administrator at Southwest High School, took this situation. They found a pathway forward for Jeremiah, and so we're going to be part of the conclusionary event of this. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Amanda Wagner, and then we will fill in any missing situations that you all may have.
Thank you.
We're going to recognize Mr. Jeremiah Worry today. He is graduating from Southwest High School today.
Okay. We have a special recognition tonight for former Southwest High School student Jeremiah Ori. Jeremiah was supposed to graduate in 2008. However, due to some outside challenges, he left without a diploma in hand. Jeremiah entered the workforce but never forgot about his dream to one day obtain his high school diploma. Jeremiah has shown perseverance and determination to reach his goal of graduating from Southwest High School. I have reviewed his credits and he meets all the requirements for his diploma. SWISD is excited to have Dr. Versta present Jeremiah with his diploma this evening.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Sorry, my head was sweaty.
Great job, boss. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Good job.
Congratulations, very proud of you. Congratulations. Very proud of you.
Congratulations.
I know, I'm like, how do we turn it off?
My bad.
I call Roger. Sorry. So I just want just a few more words. You know, we're extremely proud of all of our graduates that come through Southwest ISD. When you see a young man advocate for himself and start making connections and calls and asking the right questions, this is what it culminates to. So we're extremely proud. I know your family is here. Jeremiah, could you please introduce us to your family? This is my brother, Jesse Soto. Jesse, my wife, I'll have to do. And I just want to say, technically, you're the valedictorian. I don't know if you'd like to share a few words. You have your family here. You have all of our here.
Coming from nothing, I mean, really didn't have much growing up. We lost a lot of family members. And struggling through school, we didn't have much. Didn't have no much to lean on except Miss Faye, my brother Jesse, and basically I struggled through school with a lot of trouble with not having the people that I needed in my life the most, losing my mother, not having a father, losing a lot of family members. I mean, set me down the wrong path. At the end of the day, I look to this man right here. My brother Jesse Soto helped me out a lot. We tried getting through it so many times I felt by half a point. He encouraged me to keep going another time. I felt it once more by another point, and the third time I just tried it once more, and the third time I just gave up and I couldn't do it. And then this lady came into my life and she helped me out, and they both came together to encourage me to push more for myself and do better for me. And I got it.
We're gonna be your fill-in, okay? Is it okay? Absolutely.
Mr. Bernal, can you move a little that way? Just a little bit. There you go. Ready, and good smile. 1, 2, 3. One more. Cheese. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Can we get the high school principal, senior staff?
Senior staff. Ready, and smile. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. How about one with Jim's pop? Master. Smile. 1, 2, 3.
So I think at this moment, we're gonna ask Jeremiah to take his tassel.
Yes, yeah.
We're very proud of you, Jeremiah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You made it.
Okay, wife and brother, now you don't need to take them out for a steak. We're proud of you, Jeremiah.
Thank you.
So that does conclude our recognition.
Okay. That was fantastic. Do we have a closed session?
I do not.
Okay. So I can just call, what do I say, we don't have a closed session?
Just put on record that we're not going into closed session today. There's no further closed session today.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'll close here. All right, so we're not gonna need a closed session, so that does adjourn all of the business. Do we have one other thing, Lloyd?
You have in front of you some vaccination drives, some sporting events. I don't see volleyball, but volleyball also taking place on Friday. So we will keep sending that out to you all, but
Okay.
it's nice. This is the most normal start of school year we've had in a long time.
Oh,
That's great.
What is our attendance as of today?
549 extra kids, 539 extra kids.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We appreciate your time, and this meeting is adjourned at 6:34.